Let's talk about Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. So the less you know about the book Anxious People by Fredrik Backman going in, the better. You want to be delightfully surprised. So I'm going to give you a synopsis of it in just the basic, most barest of terms. A bank robber robs a bank, makes off with the money, and holds a group of people hostage in an empty apartment. Madness ensues as a couple of cops try to figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of the case. That's it. That's all I'm going to tell you. I don't want to tell you any more. Go into it blind, because part of the fun of Anxious People is all the little surprises that Backman puts in there. There are all sorts of humdingers and zingers and bazingas to be had around every corner. You find out about surprise relationships, surprise identities, all sorts of little things that are just kind of delightful to come across. I'm not going to give away any of them ahead of time. Trust me on this. It will make your reading enjoyment so much more pleasant. Now, speaking of pleasant, I will say I was not the biggest fan of this book from the beginning. I was afraid it was a little too madcap, a little too wacky, a little too twee. It reminded me of one of those Garry Marshall films like Valentine's Day or New Year's Day or Mother's Day. You know, the one where it's a star-studded cast and they all go about their day cutely and wackily, and they have cute and wacky dialogue with each other, and all sorts of cute and wacky things happen to them. And really it just kind of scratches the surface. It's very base level, kind of a mishmash of cute, wacky people coming together on this special day. That's what it felt like to me at first, to the point that I even had to put the book down for a little bit because it was just a little too cute and wacky for me. I mean, it was full of so many things that kind of got under my skin, like exasperated cops, or a wackadoo realtor, or a man in a silly costume. The whole thing just, it was a little too madcap. It was a little too much. That's the Benny Hill music, if you couldn't tell. But we were reading it for a book club, and so I picked it back up. Everybody else was loving it, and I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm going to give it another chance. And so I picked it back up. It kept going through it. And by the end was like, wow, I loved it. My grinchy, cold, dead heart even grew to 4 times its size, and I shed a lone tear in happiness at the wonderfulness that was the ending of Anxious People. So as I got through it, it became much more of a meditation on parenthood, a meditation on grief, a study of the ties that bind us together. There's all sorts of connective tissue that brings people together in ways that are surprising and bewildering. And to see that play out in Anxious People was just affirming and wonderful. The book has so many different quotables and things to think upon, to the point that I constantly wanted to grab a pen and write down what was being said, because we would be going along in the story and then boom, Fredrik Backman would just throw out some philosophy on life through the voice of one of the characters that I would stop and think, wow, it's pretty deep. Here's one that I'll read for you real quick. We need to be allowed to convince ourselves that we're more than the mistakes we made yesterday, that we are all of our next choices too, all of our tomorrows. Fredrik Backman is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. Surprisingly, I did not start with his other book, A Man Called Ove. That's the one that most people seem to know him by. After reading Anxious People and getting over my initial wariness and hesitancy, I went ahead and kept reading him. I read A Man Called Ove, which was wonderful, and affirming, kind of in the same sort of vein as Anxious People. Not the same story, but the same kind of themes of the bitterness that people get from life and the connectedness that brings us all together, the threads that bind us. And then I also read Beartown. Beartown was so different, about a hockey town that experiences trauma. I don't want to tell more again because it's one of those that I want you to get to settle in, get to really know the characters, because Backman is great at really exemplifying his characters, and then let the shock drop on you like an anvil. It was so different from the experience I had with Ove and with Anxious People that I kept looking at the cover to reassure myself that this was indeed the same author. It seemed like such a departure, such a different type of story, and so well done, so beautifully written, just like his other books. I guess that would be the thing that they all have in common. He's really great at just digging deep into the meat of his characters and digging into what makes them tick, and all of their motivations and their fears and their hopes and dreams, and the good things about them, the bad things about them. There aren't necessarily white hats, black hats, good actors, bad actors. They're all just people trying to get by. They all do a mix of good and bad things. I can't wait to read more, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think about Fredrik Backman's works. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that good YouTube-y stuff, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. I don't even want to tell you that much. That's a spoiler too. Okay, let me back it up.